I be then?
I don't know, but one of you two is wearing a great Halloween costume.
Oh, let's see. What am I gonna do?
And Amy, I got those zoning bylaws ready to
You
go.
guys are ready to go.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Today is March 4th, 2025, and this is the meeting of the Northborough Planning Board. This open meeting of the Northborough Planning Board is being conducted remotely pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency signed into law on March 29th, 2023. All members of the planning board are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The act allows the planning board to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. Members of the public who wish to view the live stream of this meeting may do so by going to Northborough Remote Meetings on YouTube via the link listed on the agenda. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation. This meeting will feature public comments. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Bill Pierce,
Here.
Millie Milton,
Here.
Brad Blanchett,
Here.
Anthony, are you there? Guess he's not there yet. Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Lori Connors
Here.
and Bob Federico.
Here.
Okay, and the chair ground rules. The chair will invite each speaker or applicant on the agenda by name. We have no applicants tonight. And each vote taken by the board or committee will be conducted by roll call vote. It's now 6:04, and I'll call the meeting to order. The first on our agenda is the continued public hearing pursuant to Mass General Law 40A, Section 5, on proposed amendments to the following sections of the Northborough zoning bylaw. Section 70240. I guess I probably don't have to read them all. They're on the agenda. But these are the warrant articles that we're going to be discussing for town meeting. We had a couple comments by Attorney Aikman and Lori, do you want to speak to those?
Sure, I can speak to those. I do have the version of the zoning bylaws that I just sent you this afternoon. Would you prefer, those are up and ready to go. I can share my screen, or would you prefer I speak to John Eichmann's comments? So the version I sent today includes his comments.
So you might as well pull those up and we'll just speak to the latest.
All righty. Okay. So one of the first comments that he made had to do with originally we were doing a definition of dwelling. So in our zoning bylaw today, we have a definition for dwelling. So what we were proposing to do is just alter the definition to comply with the state. His comment was that because the state definition says dwelling unit, we should say dwelling unit as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that seems simple enough. So I just made that modification. Any questions about that?
No.
Oops. I'm having trouble scrolling. Hold on. Oh, there we go. So then the next comment had to do with it had to do with changing the reference to under site plans, which I agreed with. He suggested, originally I had this listed under A, so subsection 3A, and he suggested just creating a standalone bullet E, where I'm calling out construction or installation of a detached accessory dwelling unit by itself instead of combining it with A, which said any use or activity listed under subsection A1 or 2 of this section that does not meet the minimum threshold for site plan approval by the planning board or a site plan special permit. So I agreed with him that that would be less confusing by making it a standalone bullet.
Mhm.
So, oh,
Lori, I've got a question. Some people have been asking me, can I construct an accessory dwelling unit onto an existing accessory structure, like a barn or something like that? And I said, I don't see why not, but you may
Yes.
have to go to the board. Would that fall under this? Because an attached accessory dwelling unit could be either attached to the main residence of the house, or it could be attached to an existing accessory structure like a barn or a garage or something like that.
so in my, so my intent when I wrote this is that that would not trigger minor site plan review. What would trigger minor site plan review is if they were building a new 2-car garage and then they were putting an accessory dwelling above it.
Okay, but if they had an existing 2-car garage and they wanted to add on to it for an ADU, they would not need this?
No.
Okay,
Would think
And-
they would. You don't think they should?
Well, my rationale is that oftentimes when you have a detached 2-car garage, you have a space above the garage that people usually use as like a family space or for storage purposes. So a lot of times what they're doing is they're converting that space into an in-law apartment, but they're not actually changing the exterior of the building at all.
Mhm.
So that's typically what I have seen with in-law apartments when you're dealing with an existing 2-car garage.
See that, but the way I hear Bob saying it, do you mean, Bob, like, say there's a barn and they're attaching a structure to the side, front, or back of it?
I guess my point would be, if you take a look at the one that was done on Summer Street.
Mhm.
Basically it's a standalone, but it's attached to a existing barn, if you will. And since there's no definition of what is an attachment, they literally ran some 2x8s across to make something like a pergola, which bridges the two buildings, therefore it's attached. And I guess my question is, would this particular parenthesis E line bring this into discussion?
In my opinion, no, because
Okay.
that is the status quo. So right now, if you have a detached, if you have an accessory structure like a barn or a 2-car garage, and you're attaching an accessory dwelling to it, you do not have to go through any form of site plan review today. So why would we require it in the future? Whereas if you are constructing a new detached structure, so whether it's a standalone accessory dwelling or whether it's a 2-car garage accessory dwelling combo or a barn accessory dwelling combo, then that is something that's brand new. That's something that wouldn't be allowed today. So that should require a little bit more oversight.
Just because I was reading all those emails with the other town today, and they do say that it's attached or inside, if it's attached or inside of the principal dwelling. But if it's attached to a detached accessory structure, to me, I feel like that would mean minor site plan review by you guys. Because if you're attaching it to the principal dwelling, then you already have all the electricity and utilities. Whereas if you have a standalone accessory structure and now you're making it into a living unit, to me, I feel like that wouldn't need minor site plan review.
I mean, we can change that. That's not the way I envisioned it because that's not what's required today. And today we do allow accessory dwellings to be attached to accessory structures with no form of site plan review. So, you know, that would be more than what's currently allowed. And in my experience, so I've had a good deal of experience with accessory dwellings over the course of my career. And a common way of doing an accessory dwelling is just what I said. So you have a 2-car garage with a room above a garage, and people want to convert that into an accessory dwelling. Or you have a large barn that exists on the parcel, and people want to put an accessory dwelling in the barn. And in those circumstances, there's no exterior work. So it doesn't impact the look of the accessory structure in any way. Whereas if
Totally.
you're building something new, like you're building a new barn, then, you know, that's a change to the neighborhood. A new 2-car garage with an accessory dwelling, that's a change to what currently exists.
I can see your point if it's inside, like you're saying, if it's above the garage or it's in the barn. But I feel like the way Bob's saying it is it's attached to the side of it, which I feel is different. Because anyone can have an old like shed and now they're going to attach to it and say, well, this is an accessory dwelling now. And I feel that's a whole different look than being inside of the barn or inside of the garage or.
Well, if you're attaching it to the garage, then chances are you're going into the backyard. So the look from the street is maintained. It's the same.
My main thing is that it gets all the review from the development team that it would if it was a detached structure. I mean, I think if it's inside, then it's not as big of a deal, but if it's outside, attached to it,
Well, we
then
can
just
change the language if you want.
what
Is
do
that
what
what the
do other
Yeah.
board
majority of the board
members?
wants?
Yeah, I mean, me just being new to this board, I would like to see some sort of review if there is any change to the structure. I know we got the question at the last meeting about putting a structure in the front of the property. So even though the garage itself is already there, I mean, I think it leaves a lot of room for interpretation, on the developer. And if we just have something to kind of give it some oversight, so people aren't taking advantage of our bylaws.
Mhm.
I'd agree. It warrants a little bit closer look if they're doing something like that.
Okay, I'll think about how best to alter the language. I can't really think of the wording right
Yeah.
off the top of my head, but I will ponder that
Mhm.
and come up with a change.
Have you gotten many applications?
I haven't gotten any applications, but I've had a lot of questions.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I've been telling them to what their best bet, because 2025 is gonna experience 3 different sets of ADU regulations. One was our old set, one is the current set under the state, and the third set is going to be, you know, hopefully passed at the town meeting in April. I said, your best bet is to just wait until April. You know, get the designs going, stuff like that, but you know, just jumping back and forth between codes is really, really awkward. And I've been telling people, you know, if you can hold off a little bit until more of the dust is settled out.
Mhm.
Because each one of the 3 that we've experiencing this year has slightly different issues, but they're actually big hurdles if you're not careful.
Right.
So I've been telling people what's been going on, informing them of where they can go to get information, you know, these drafts that we're looking at. This is the way we're kind of hoping things are gonna go at the town meeting. So I'm kind of deferring people to these, you know, to start thinking in this direction.
Mm.
You know, but we do have a separate in our permitting system, we do have a separate permit just for an ADU because there's so much wrapped around it. You know, besides the building code. So there's a lot of checks and acknowledgements that they have to sign on to when they do an ADU.
All right. So there are a number of changes that he suggested to the accessory dwelling unit bylaw. So of course, what I tried to do was to fit the definition, the state's definition, within the structure of our accessory dwelling bylaw as it appeared in the use definitions. And he didn't really like what I had done. So he suggested just going word for word with the state definition. So I modified the language so that it complies completely with the state definition. And then he recommended, because of course, there are a number of definitions that the state added. So rather than list all of those various definitions, he suggested adding this sentence right here, the definition set forth in 760 CMR 71. So that's a way we can get around listing all of those. Let's see. Then he had also suggested kind of so if you may recall at the last public hearing, there was concern about, well, what if you have this circumstance where you have a single family home that's located 100 feet off of the roadway? Why do you care if the accessory dwelling is in front of the structure or not? So we changed the wording. So it says, where feasible, a detached accessory dwelling shall be located to the rear or side of the principal dwelling and shall be set back a minimum of 10 feet from other buildings on the lot. So it's kind of like the should language that we had softened our shalls with in prior versions of this bylaw. So in a few locations, he had suggested where feasible. So I went ahead and included that. So under C, where feasible, and then the last phrase is to the extent feasible. So then we did receive a letter from DPW Director Scott Charpentier. He had wanted specific language. Oh, geez. My mouse died, so I'm trying to use do this without a mouse, which is always a challenge for me on a laptop. So letter F, I included his new language. He wanted some specificity put into the bylaw having to do with the water meter and the water service and the sewer service. So the language seemed like it would not conflict with the state. So I went ahead and included that, but of course I'll send it to John for his ultimate approval. But any questions about this new red language? So letter F and letter G.
No, I actually just had the question about the where feasible because it seemed pretty vague to me and pretty loose for interpretation, but it basically says where it can be done, it should be here or it shall be here. Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
And then letter I, this was something that Amy emailed to me earlier today, and I quickly shot it off to John Eichman to see if it'd be okay. I think this was a question that came out of the public hearing session last time about the ownership and whether they could condoize and sell off the accessory dwelling separate from the single family home. And in this case, if we include this language, that won't be possible.
Where are you on the
Letter I. So I got my
Oh,
little.
down there. Okay.
Yep.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
This morning, I started reviewing other towns that are going to town meeting. There were a couple of towns going to town meeting this week, so I read their bylaws. And they had this type of a statement, which is why I shouted off to Lori and said, do you think we need something like this?
Hmm,
I think it definitely clarifies things, so I think it's a good idea to include it.
interesting, yeah.
So then the next one, he also had a suggestion to delete the last sentence under this paragraph right here. So originally the sentence said, provisions of this section shall not apply to lots shown on a plan and part of an application for a special permit or subdivision, the application for which has been duly filed as required by the zoning bylaw or the Mass General laws before the first publication of notice of the public hearing on such amendment required by Mass General law, etc. So his comment was, per our discussion, I recommend deleting the sentence indicated as unnecessary. There is no need to exempt lots shown on a subdivision or A&R filed before this bylaw is approved. Mass General law already exempts those lots from zoning changes if the plans are ultimately approved. The proposed exemption for new lots shown on a special permit application would only apply to applications presently on file with the town. And I understand that there are no such applications. So I went ahead and did what he said and deleted that. Now, the next one, I have that in red, just as a reminder to talk to you about it. So John's comment was, the new zoning act amendment protecting some lots from merger applies by its terms and provides a minimum level of protection that the town cannot restrict. It is not clear exactly how the various provisions of the state law concerning merger will be interpreted going forward, but the clear intent of the law is to expand availability of buildable lots. I recommend that you delay adopting bylaws addressing lot merger until the application of the state law is better understood.
So he's saying just to take it off for this year?
Yeah, so what he's saying is that the state really provided no guidance on how we should deal with this change to the law. So his suggestion, and we talked about it more on the telephone, is that just get rid of it. Chances are there's going to be a rare case that comes up, and then you'll just have to deal with it at the time. But chances are there's going to be litigation that comes out of this, and there'll be more clarity going forward as to how we're supposed to deal with it. Just so you know, I did send this to Margaret Hurley from the Attorney General's office for her to review our language and provide feedback. I haven't heard anything from her yet. So maybe this is something that we might kick the can in hopes that she gets back to us before our next meeting.
I
And
actually thought this one was a little complicated to try to understand and then explain to an audience of people that are going to probably not wrap their head around it. I don't think it's well constructed.
Millie, the original law back in 1981 that started this whole merger business,
Yeah,
just as confusing, and
Yeah.
nobody knew it back then. So
Yeah.
to take something that's difficult to understand and unwrap it so that people can understand it, it's impossible.
right.
It's
No,
crazy.
I totally agree with that.
yeah, what we were trying to do here is to make it more understandable so
Yeah.
that we would know how to apply it. But yeah, I mean, and maybe we fell short in doing that.
Well, but I don't know if there would have been any other way. I mean, I had a lot of questions on it because it wasn't worded clearly to me, so.
Yes, the law itself was very confusing to me
Mhm.
as well.
Yep.
So, so maybe we can, unless anybody has any other comments about it, maybe we can kind of just jump over it and figure out at the next meeting what we're gonna do with it.
Yeah, I just assume just remove it. If it's gonna be that confusing and, you know, even the attorneys are saying that there are gonna be lawsuits under this, I don't think it's worth our time.
Okay, do you want me to just remove it now?
I think that that would probably be okay. It would be okay with me.
Yep.
Yeah, that'd be okay with me.
Okey-dokey,
Sure.
done.
So if it's removed and someone comes forward, you just follow what the state is stating?
Yeah, so I guess what Bob will have to do is they apply for a building permit. And he'll just have to look to see if it's 10,000 square feet of area,
Mhm.
75 feet of frontage, and then he'll have to tell them, okay, you know, it's in one of our residential districts, so you're gonna have to build a single family. It's gonna have to be this size, and you need to have 3 bedrooms in it. At least.
Yep, we'll burn that bridge when we get to it.
Fun, fun.
I mean, I agree with putting in these limitations, but I think the attorney has a good point. Like I've said before, this is kind of like the Dover Amendment where the government throws it out there and lets the courts decide how what it actually looks like. And, you know, this might be a little premature, you know, because this unmerging of lots it's complicated. It takes a land use wizard to understand it
Yeah,
both directions. And, you know, there's going to be a lot of what ifs. Can I do this? Well, how about if I do this? Or how about if I try that?
right.
I think it's probably a good idea to wait on it. But I wouldn't trash it altogether. I might come back next year and just put it back in.
Mhm.
All right, so moving on. The next one, land clearing and grading. He just had a little bit of wordsmithing in this sentence right here. So he wanted me to add the underlined text as set forth below. My language was a little bit different as far as that phrase is concerned. So I went with his language. And then, yeah,
Just a quick
any
question
questions?
on that. We're
Yeah.
adding that because it's already being reviewed by an engineer? Is that why it's okay that they're doing it?
Yeah, so
Conservation?
the reason is that our bylaw having to do with grading is much less comprehensive than the new stormwater management and
Yep.
land disturbance permit. So you may remember we were talking about this with the reservoir common
Right.
driveway. Yeah. So our bylaw is 4 pages long and the Conservation Commission's bylaw and regulations are 33 pages long.
Yep.
And there's nothing that is left out from our
Okay.
bylaw. So right now it's redundant and it really isn't fair to make people go to 2 different permitting entities for the same exact activity, in my opinion.
Yep, and that's what I thought, but I just want to make sure.
Yep.
Mhm.
So then we move on to the sign bylaw, and I think he only had one small change. Let me move on to that. So the only thing I changed had to do with, it's a number 4 here. Flashing, moving, and animated signs and signs designed to attract the eye by intermittent or repeated motions are prohibited. So the only thing that I changed is originally it said flashing, moving, and animated signs. Flashing, moving, and animated signs designed to attract the eye. So he just said it was confusing. So we added an extra comma. Put signs here and added signs here. See. And then this is something I wanted to talk to you about. Under construction and maintenance of signs. I know we talked about this quite a bit with design review. Number 2, no sign shall be painted or posted directly on the exterior surface of any wall except glazing. Now, he put a comment saying, consider defining the word glazing.
Mm.
Well, I Googled glazing, and to me, it looked like it was pretty clear that we're talking about glass. But what are your thoughts? Do you think that we should further define it, or do you think that the Webster dictionary, I can actually pull it up.
So are you
But-
basically saying no sign shall be posted or painted unless it's glass? On a
So
wall?
yeah, so originally we had quite a bit of discussion about where these window signs would be. And you know, originally it says including windows and doors. So that was actually Bob's recommendation, to change it from windows and doors to glazing. So maybe you want to explain that a little more, Bob.
In certain circumstances, you can have a side wall of a wall that is made out of glass. And glazing basically encompasses all types of glass surfaces, whether it's a skylight, a window and a door, a window on the side of the door, the window itself, you know, and actually in all the building codes, it doesn't necessarily talk about windows, it talks about glazing, which would be any glass or transparent surface, including plexiglass.
So it could be posted directly on the windows or doors, on the glass part.
On the glass part, yeah. I mean, well, basically it says signs cannot be painted on the outside of any wall. So if you've got a brick wall on your building, you can't
Yeah.
paint the sign directly on it. You know,
Okay.
kind of like the big murals in Worcester and things like that. You
Yes.
can't have a sign that's painted directly on the brick wall. It has to be on some sort of a backing material that's attached to the wall.
Okay.
In the instance for glazing, you can paint right on the glass surface itself.
Mhm.
This came about is because we allowed window signs. In the past, there were no window signs allowed.
Mhm.
So it said no sign shall be painted or posted, and it said including windows and doors.
Hmm.
So we were trying to decide how to update this so it allows the sign on the window.
Got it.
So the definition for in the Merriam-Webster dictionary is glasswork. And then there's another definition that says transparent material such as glass used for windows. So are we satisfied with the mainstream definition, or do you think we need to define it?
I'm okay with that.
Then another minor change he suggested, G. Here,
Mm.
he wanted us to specify one directory, and he said one window sign, but I did not agree with that. So I did not specify one window sign because there may be several window signs. So each business establishment shall be allowed one directory and window signs and not more than 2 of the following types of signs: wall, projecting blade, freestanding, or awning. Any questions about that? And I think that does it for signs. Yep, no more. So then,
Can we just go back to the number 3, the wall signs?
sure.
Just listed at the bottom of that page. Can you just clarify what that actually is getting to? Because it's for me, again, it's a little confusing. It says in the case of a sign perpendicular to the wall, it shouldn't stick out more than 6 feet. That seems an odd, like you're having a sign stick out 6 feet from a wall perpendicularly.
So that has to do with a projecting sign.
Oh. Well, yeah, but a projecting sign meaning sticking out.
Right.
Can you give me an example of what that looks like?
Sure.
I
Let
mean,
me,
6 feet seems like a big bit of a jut out. Unless
This
I'm
was
not,
actually part of the bylaw already, and we moved it from a location to this. Because there was a section called location, and it had 3 parts to it. But those parts, it was buried so deep that nobody ever saw them. So we took out those 3 pieces and put them in different places.
now we're
But
looking at them.
this one's one of them.
So I'm still having a hard time envisioning what that 6-foot projected sign, you mean like a hanging sign could be 6 feet out from a wall?
but let me, I just clicked on images of projecting signs. So here's a variety of projecting signs.
Okay. Oh, okay.
So you can see that there is often hardware
Yep. Yep.
that attaches to the wall itself, and then the projecting sign goes from there. So a
Okay.
lot of times it's like decorative hardware. These aren't like the alpha structural.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I
makes sense.
think I get it now. I wasn't sure if you meant like projecting, like light projecting, or, substantial structure projecting, but okay, I get it.
Do you think somewhere else in the bylaw, it says it can't go over the road, right? So if the sidewalk is only 4 feet, it's only gonna go over the 4 feet of the sidewalk. It can't jet out into the
The street.
street where a truck will hit it,
Well, that's kind of what I was trying to envision is
right?
Yeah, we did have lots of debate, Bob and I, about gosh, let's see where it is.
Okay.
Sign shall not
About
be
going
projected
over
over
public
public
property.
way.
Do you remember where it is in the bylaw, Bob?
No, I don't.
Okay.
So not going over public property, meaning it can't actually even go over a sidewalk.
Well, that was
Yeah,
my question.
So
Yeah.
that
Okay.
that
Just curious.
I had a problem with that because oftentimes buildings are constructed right to the sidewalk edge. So
Right.
it's within the right of way. So
Mm.
the sidewalk itself is within the roadway right of way.
Mm.
And if the building is right up against the road right of way, then usually that is when you need a projecting sign, because
Right.
the building is so close to the sidewalk that if you don't have a projecting sign, nobody can figure out, they can't read the sign that's flat up against the wall.
Right. Right. Okay.
So there are many downtown locations, especially in historic downtowns, where
Yeah.
they allow projecting signs to project over the sidewalk.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, so we altered the language so it doesn't say that anymore. It
Mhm.
does allow you to do a projecting sign over the public right of way.
Would there need to be a height criteria on that or not? Just,
We do have a height criteria.
I
Let's see
saw
if I
something
can
that
find it.
said not to exceed the height, but
It's 10 feet back
okay,
here. It's number
minimum.
16 above. So let me
Okay.
show you where
Okay.
that is.
I mean, I was just looking for an example of what that sign would look like. I thought it was more of a light projecting sign. Wasn't sure.
Okay, so here we go, 16. All right.
Really? Yeah.
Projecting blade signs are subject to
from
a
grade
minimum
level.
height requirement of 10
Yeah.
feet up, from the grade level to the bottom of the sign.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
all right. So now the
It even
inclusionary.
says shall not
zoning bylaw-
extend over a walkway more than 2/3.
Yes.
Okay.
So now, the affordable housing. So John Eichen and I had like an hour and a half phone conversation yesterday to discuss some of the comments that he made on the inclusionary zoning bylaw. And I was trying to provide some clarity as to what we were trying to accomplish. And he was suggesting some alternative language, which I then incorporated. So what I was looking for from him was verification that I captured it correctly in his interpretation. So unfortunately, he wasn't able to get back to me by this meeting. So there may be some additional tweaks going forward. But one of the comments that he made, starting under applicability, is he made a comment. The word project is capitalized but not defined. A definition should be added that if that was the intention, otherwise eliminate the capitalization. So I changed the configuration of this paragraph a little bit so that I'm defining what a project is. So the project are these three various options.
Mm-hmm.
Question. Can we use a different word than project? Because you know how they used to call housing developments the projects? So I'm wondering if like someone would read this and take it negatively, like that we're calling affordable housing the projects, you know?
Mm.
Like I noticed in another bylaw I read, they called it like a housing development, or so it says shall apply to any housing development, and then a housing development shall consist of the following. Like, I don't know, when I first read project, I was like, I don't want people to think we're calling it the projects.
Yeah, it's a good call. The what you just described, the housing development is more inclusive of any type of housing project.
Would you be okay if I shortened it with development?
I would.
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I will do that. Let's see. Okay. All right, another thing, we discussed number 2 for a long time. Because his concern was originally we had the words occupancy permit or from issuance of an occupancy permit. So then his question was, well, what occupancy permit are you talking about? You know, if we're talking about an A&R development, then are you talking about the first occupancy permit or the 9th occupancy permit? So he thought that it would be much clearer and easier to track for the town if we specified from issuance of a new construction residential building permit. So that would be the first one. So in the case of, 100-unit developments that has 10 different buildings, then the clock would start at the issuance of the first building permit for the first building. Okay,
Yeah.
are you guys okay with that?
Yep.
Mhm.
All right. Let's see. Okay, then we also spent a lot of time talking about what we're going to call this permit. So his suggestion, because a lot of these projects are already triggering a special permit, whether it's for assisted living or multifamily or mixed use, there's a special permit. And then also they're triggering site plan approval because pretty much any project that it requires a significant development that's not single family also triggers site plan approval. And then, of course, you have definitive subdivision approval. So his suggestion was, let's just call it an inclusionary housing permit. It'll make it much easier for everybody to understand which permit we're talking about. And then he said that you can't apply a special permit for uses that are by right, like single family homes are by right uses. So you can't then make the affordability aspect of it be a special permit. So this language, I pretty much highlighted the entire paragraph. So what it says in a nutshell is that in instances where it's a by right use, so like single family homes, a subdivision, if it's an open space community, then, or if it's a special permit use that is under the jurisdiction of the planning board, then the planning board is the permit granting authority. If it is a special permit use that the ZBA issues, then the ZBA is the inclusionary housing permit granting authority.
Now, there won't be any extra fee for this, will there? You know how like our special permit, when they go for it, there's a fee.
If you don't want there to be a fee, then we don't assign a fee. If you want there to be a fee, then we will.
I don't think there should be.
Right, because I think they're doing the town, you know, a favor by doing the affordable housing. So you hate to charge them
Yeah.
a fee and then ask them to do the affordable housing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I made a note about that. So then wherever I said before, special permit granting authority, I have now changed it to permit granting authority. So then another thing that I changed is he thought it was too confusing for us to include the special uses that are going to be allowed within an inclusionary housing development in with density bonus, because he's like, well, it's not really a density bonus. It's a bonus that you're allowing them flexibility of uses, but it's not a density bonus. So he wanted me to make a separate heading. So I just went along with what it was called in the MBTA bylaw, the MDOD. We just called it use regulations. So you will notice this table. The things that are highlighted in red is because originally what I had done is I had said like the Board of Appeals would be the permit granting authority for all cottage dwellings. And then for two-family dwellings, I always made the planning board the special permit granting authority. But then when I was looking at a specific project, so say we have a development that is proposed within the RC district. It doesn't make sense. So if they're exercising this option to do different housing types, it doesn't make sense that they would go to the planning board for the vast majority for the special permit, site plan approval, and everything else. But then they'd have to file a special approval for like one cottage dwelling within the
Right.
development. So what I did is I streamlined by district. So in the RA district, it's always the planning board, the special permit granting authority. So pretty much the residential districts, it's always the planning board. And in the business districts, it's always the Board of Appeals. So that coincides with the use chart.
That makes sense.
Okay. So you're good with that?
Mm.
All right, so then now the density bonus is a standalone section. So this is where we're talking about how many bonus units you get. So Amy, I know that this is something that you wanted. So originally the way we've been going back and forth. So originally I said that if you wanted to do a density bonus, that it would be by site plan approval. So you wouldn't need extra consideration. It wouldn't be a special permit in order to vary the dimensional requirements and to get the 2 bonus units. Now I know Amy at the last meeting, you had discussed that you really wanted it to be by special permit. So I included the special permit language. But I just was looking for verification from the board that this is what you want. So when you make something by special permit, understand that it's an inherent disadvantage to do. So you're making it harder for somebody to want to go this route because it's discretionary. But if that's what you folks want, then I will make it by special permit.
Way I read it in all the other towns, that's where it was. The density bonus was a special permit. Like the rest of the bylaw could have been by right if they don't want the density bonus. But when you're asking for a density bonus and changes in the setbacks or changes in the dimensional requirements, then I think it needs a special permit. That's
Have
the
we
way I
ever
read it.
had anything like a density bonus in this town before? Do you know? Does anybody know?
Possibly in the open space. I'd have to look. The open
Might be in the
space
open space, but no one's ever done it.
Well, that's the thing. So I'm curious as to whether or not maybe we could have it for now by special permit because we really haven't gone through the process of it, and then maybe adopt it if in a couple of years it just doesn't seem to be a necessary element.
Some towns don't even allow density bonuses, and some do, and the ones that do allow it by special permit. But Lori said they're more apt to do the affordable housing if you give a density bonus.
Right. So it's that little bit of a carrot.
Right.
But if we
Mm.
haven't really ever if we haven't gone through that process before, we may not know really what to expect about how to do it. I don't think it's too complicated, but at the same time, if we find in a couple of years that it's really not a big deal and we shouldn't really need to have special permit for it, change it to just by right.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Especially Amy, you've done the research and that's what other towns are doing. So I think this is a great way to start. And like you said, Millie, if nothing comes of it, then we can remove it in a couple of years.
I just think it allows, it protects the town a little bit. A
Yeah.
little more scrutiny on these projects when they come up.
Yeah.
If
I'm just a little concerned that, we're trying to get people to build affordable units, right?
Mhm.
And, this sort of makes it sound like we're not.
If you look at like
know-
Westboro, Hopkinton, and all the other surrounding towns, none of them even allow a density bonus. So we're one step ahead of them. We're
Right.
saying, okay, you can come in front of us, but we're gonna go through this special permit and we can allow a density bonus and we can allow the zoning dimensions to change. Especially where we're changing the frontage and the size of the lots, I think we need a little bit of we need to review it.
I mean, I think if I understand correctly, the point of this a little bit, Lori, is that if you say that, you have a inclusionary law that says if you build 10 units, then one of them has to be affordable, then somebody might say, well, I'm only going to build 9. And this gives them that little bit of incentive to say, well, you know, if you actually do build 10, we're going to allow this. So I do think that there's a give and take there. And I honestly, I think it's worth considering.
I think, you know, the other thing to remember is that, you know, we could say no, right? And the developer is going to be thinking about that. You know,
Yes, because
they're
it
going to
does
apply for
say,
a special permit and we say no, now the whole project is not
Well,
feasible.
no, only that part of the project is unfeasible. They still have to do the affordable part.
yeah, so what it says is that the permit granting authority may allow a reduction in the density and dimensional requirements.
Right. May,
So I
not
would
will.
just delete by special permit. So even if it was not by special permit, the planning board still has the discretion to allow it or not.
And if they do a special permit, is there a charge? Like, do they have to pay for that?
They would.
So again, if we're trying to provide a carrot here, there's your carrot, right? We still may allow it, but at least they don't have to pay for the special permit.
Then
But
can
we
we just
could
say you
waive
don't
the
have to
special
pay for a
permit.
special permit, waive that fee?
Yeah, we could waive that fee and it could even be in here. But I think if we're one of the only towns allowing these density bonuses, I think
We gotta
we
see
do
how
the
it
special
goes.
permit.
Well,
I mean,
remember that they pay the fee when they file the application. So that's a full month before the public hearing starts.
Hmm,
So that money's already been deposited into the general fund at that
okay.
point.
but can there be like in the fee list? Can there be a little like footnote that says special permits for density bonuses for the affordable housing? You know, not,
Waived.
you don't have to pay it, it's waived. Just have it listed right on the fee regulation sheet.
But then what happens if we don't approve it? Do they have to then pay it later?
No,
No, because they didn't get it.
No.
But they still went through the special permit process.
But we waived it.
and it's more than they're getting in other towns.
Yep.
Again, I just want to make sure that, you know, if we're putting a carrot out there, that we're putting a carrot out there and not just that, you know, yeah, we're putting a carrot out there, but not really.
Well, I think a
That's all.
density bonus offering it is a pretty good carrot.
Yeah,
I
especially
think,
if we're gonna waive the fee and it just, we get a chance to do a close review of it. I mean, and even like Millie says, to her point, if in a couple of years if we even see any of these, or if we see them and they go well and we don't feel like it's necessary, we can always reverse it. So I don't see why we need to leave ourselves exposed.
Great.
oops.
Okay, so you want to leave that in?
When I called the woman in Medway when I was reading theirs and they have a density bonus. And she said, even though they have it listed in there, no one's ever gone for it because they just want to do the housing and they don't even care. She said they've never gone for it. She doesn't know why, but they just take the easiest route and build the 10 with the 2 affordable and I don't know. But I don't think it has to do with, it had nothing to do with because of a special permit or any of that. She just said there just hasn't been an interest because they're such small projects.
Yeah.
We had a couple projects a long time ago where we used to have an inclusionary zoning bylaw before my day, and they had to do a couple, and there were no bonuses then.
Yeah,
So I
mean,
feel like
I said,
here we're giving a bonus at least.
and I think that's a nice consideration.
Mhm.
that is the last change that he recommended, other than, changing the name of the permit granting authority.
So I wanted to go back to C for a second. If you go back to C, I was wondering if we could ask Attorney Aikman, like, we listed out the districts, and I know I'd said this before, but I feel like it should say the inclusionary zoning provisions of this section should apply to any project. Like, I still don't see why we're calling out specific districts. Like when we had Avalon, and I know it was a 40B, but if it wasn't, it was in the highway district or the industrial district. I feel like by listing specific districts, we might miss one. If somebody goes for a use variance in industrial or in highway,
Well,
we're not
these
going
are
to
the
catch it.
only districts that allow residential uses.
Yeah, I kind of looked
So
at that.
if they're going to ask for a variance to do housing, then that's a comprehensive permit. And in the case of a comprehensive permit, then it would be 20 or 25% of the units, not 15%. So we would get more of a bonus by doing a comprehensive permit in those districts than we would by doing inclusionary zoning. So I wouldn't recommend doing inclusionary zoning in those districts. I would, if I sat down with a developer who was interested in doing a housing project in the industrial district, I would tell them the only way you can do that is through chapter 40B. So if it's an ownership project, it's 20% of the units have to be affordable. If it's a rental property, it's 25%. But remember, then all of the units count. So even though only 25% of the units are affordable, we get credit for 100% of the units. So by allowing a variance to do an inclusionary zoning provision, the town will lose out big time.
I was just thinking back to the baseball fields. When they came up, they were offering like 10% affordable, maybe 12. And they were in a section of town that didn't allow housing. And we never said to them, well, what if you offer 25%, when we were in talks with them?
But so you guys didn't want to rezone their property. You didn't want to put it in the MBTA. So if they were to come to me tomorrow, I would tell them the only way you can do it is under a comprehensive permit. And then the town will get way more bang for the affordable housing buck
Mm,
by doing the comprehensive permit instead of this.
mm-hmm.
I just want to make sure we catch it, because when thinking back to the baseball, they weren't offering that much. As
But
much
also
affordable housing.
remember, they were trying to encourage you to include them in the MBTA district, which
Mhm.
you folks elected not to do.
Right. Yep. I just don't want something to fall through the cracks, that's all. Okay,
Right, so I'm gonna-
so
yeah.
like Lori said, that covers all the zoning bylaws. Does anybody else have any additional questions, comments?
Oh, let's see.
No.
Amy, before we move on, I just want to let you guys know I have to jump off in like 5-10 minutes. My wife is working late and I need to pick up my kid from baseball.
Okay,
But I just want to be on to make sure we get through the bylaws. So
okay, well, thank you. So nobody else has any questions? Or additions? I think we should leave it open because Lori still has to hear back from Attorney Aikman. And there is actually a webinar on March 11th. I can forward everybody a link, and the state is holding a webinar with the latest updates on the ADU bylaw and
Yeah,
Yeah, please do.
Tuesday.
Okay. All right.
So our next meeting, of course, is March 18th. We do have the Reservoir Common driveway on at 6 o'clock. But I know they asked for a continuance from the Conservation Commission. He has not asked for a continuance from me, but maybe it would be prudent to schedule the continuance of the public hearing for the same time, so there won't be like a lag in the agenda
Yep.
if they do ask for a continuance.
Sounds good. Actually, I'll ask too if there are any public comments. I do see there's one person in the audience. If they had any questions, you could raise your hand. No, I don't see any public comments. All right. So then do I have a motion to continue the zoning bylaw public hearing till 6 o'clock on March 18th?
So moved.
Is there
Second.
a second? Okay, roll call vote. Brad Blanchett,
Aye.
Anthony Zaitin,
Aye.
Bill Pierce,
Aye.
Millie Milton,
Aye.
and I'm an aye. So that is continued to the 18th. Next on our agenda, there was a housing production plan or a master plan implementation committee sent out a letter about housing.
Mhm.
I can pull it up. Let's see. Let's see. Just want to have it on my screen. So I can pull it up. Okay, can everybody see?
Mhm.
Okay. So, I could read the letter into the record, or did everybody have a chance to read it?
I
Yep.
did.
I got it.
Okay, so this is a letter that came out from the Master Plan Implementation Committee. Rick Leaf had written a letter and brought it forward to the Master Plan Implementation Committee to send to us as a planning board. He wanted to talk about going forward with the housing section of the master plan. And he specifically was calling out the housing production plan and the different goals, H13, H21, H24, H2-6, and 3-1. So Rick had sent this out to our board and he said, he wanted to call attention to these items, and it's up to the board which ones we want to go forward with, or if we want to say to that master plan implementation committee that, yes, we got this, but we're really busy this year, so we'll think about it next year. It was really just to trigger, these are some of the housing goals that are in the master plan. Also attached to the memo is a copy of the master plan housing chapter for the review. But my copy of this email didn't have that chapter attached.
Yeah, I don't think mine did either.
I'm not sure if anyone had a chance to review it,
I
but I
didn't-
was thinking for the next meeting, if people wanted to review the master plan housing chapter, or if has anyone read the 2012 housing plan,
Mm-mm.
we should review both of those before deciding what we're going to go forward with. But it's really an email to the planning board to consider looking into different housing aspects that are listed in the master plan. I know when Rick first started talking about this at the MPIC, I had questions for him about the housing options for seniors. That's the first one. So I actually had a discussion with Rick, about an hour-long discussion, and I took notes. And I sent the notes to Rick so he could verify it for accuracy, because I didn't know a lot about housing, and Rick has always been the person in charge of housing in town. He seems to be the one that brings those items forward at town meeting. So I had specific questions, and I thought I would share those with the board too, because you guys might have the same questions that I did. And I also reached out to Fran Baxtron because she is the rep for Council of Aging. Because what I hear when I talk to seniors in my neighborhood and my parents and their friends, I ask them, are you looking for a housing option? You know, there are seniors moving out of my neighborhood. And I actually have asked them why they're moving. Is it because there are no options in Northborough? And the answers I was getting is that the seniors would rather retire in place. They'd rather have lower taxes. But the housing for the seniors, like, wasn't high on their list because it's more expensive to move out of your house and pay rent if you already own your house outright. And Rick and Fran actually agreed with that. But I do have it all written down in notes, and Rick and Fran both gave me approval to share it with the board.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. So that was one of the goals, housing options for seniors, and I just wanted to get more information on it. I do think, in my opinion, I would like to find out the impacts on town services and infrastructure relating to housing. I think that would be really interesting to find out. I'm not sure, Lori, what that would be. Would that be like a consultant?
Well, I know back in the 90s and in the late 80s, there were a number of cost of community services studies that were done across Massachusetts and various other communities through the country. Those, I haven't seen any recent cost of community services studies done. One of the things that they found out is that single-family homes tended to be a net drain on municipal services. You know, of course, I'm sure you've heard the cost of education and, of course, the services associated with fire and police, as opposed to commercial industrial, which tend to pay more in taxes than they consume in services. And then there was different types of housing. I can look to see if I can find something, but in order to have something like that done for our community, I would recommend hiring a consultant based on my lack of ability to spend even a full day on updating the subdivision rules and regs. I don't think that I'd really have the time to devote to it, unfortunately.
Or is that something that CMRPC could do?
I could. And in fact, I did reach out to them a while ago to see what they would charge to update the housing production plan. And I'm sure I have their scope of work. I think it was $25,000, but I will spend a minute. Oops. If you'd like. And I can see if I can find that. Or I could just email it to you after the meeting. That might be a little bit more
Yeah, I think after the
Yeah,
meeting
that's
is
fine.
fine.
Yeah, okay, I'll do that.
That's a good point, though.
With this letter, nothing is a rush, you know. It's good that they threw it out there, but it's nothing that we have to decide tonight. These are just pointing out the goals that as a planning board we can consider. And I think we have, and I said this in the master plan committee, I think the planning board has done a great job in the past year. I mean, there have been a lot of new mandates by the state with the MBTA, and we got that approved at town meeting. Then we have the ADU bylaw. We've been working on that, and that should go forth at this town meeting. We're working on inclusionary zoning. And as part of inclusionary zoning, there was even something that included housing for people with disabilities.
Mm-hmm.
We said if they're over 30 units, to include some for disabilities. So I really feel like, you know, we are cognizant and we're really, thinking about affordability and disabilities and what Rick and I discussed and others have discussed, it's not just a Northborough problem, it's pretty much a state problem and a countrywide problem. Even other countries. I just got back from Ireland last night, but I had a newspaper in the morning. I was reading at breakfast, and it was like solving Dublin's housing crisis. I felt like I was back in Northborough.
Everywhere.
Like different countries, same problem.
Mm-hmm.
So
Do we have a standard definition for seniors that, and to your point, Amy, what they're looking for or what to get them to stay in our town? How does that work? If you have a married couple and one's a senior and one's not, or, does that make it work? It just don't know exactly what that entails.
yeah,
So
no, Rick.
the state does define it based on specific types of housing. So it's generally considered 55 and over or 62 years of age and older.
Mm-hmm.
So then it's usually one spouse has to be at
Okay.
least that age. And then it does allow you to have one underaged.
And the
I
main
asked the
point is
seniors.
to be,
Sorry.
the main
Go ahead.
point is to be affordable and have accessibility needs, or
So that's not
no
necessarily
criteria on that?
So that's just if you're going to call housing senior, it doesn't necessarily have to be affordable.
Oh, okay.
So it could be luxury housing for seniors.
Oh, interesting.
Affordable has to do with HUD defines affordability. So if you
Okay.
look at the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities,
Yeah.
they have affordable housing standards
Right.
for different size households. So it's based on the number of people in the household
Yeah.
and it's based on where you live. So like Northborough is in Worcester County, and I believe there are like they split up Worcester County into I think 3 different categories.
Right. Right.
But I'd be happy to email that out to you folks if you're interested.
I mean, I kind of understood that part. I didn't necessarily, Amy had brought up that the reason they are moving out is because they can't afford to stay in their house. But maybe their house is, it's costly to heat or something that I was just trying to figure out if there's an overlap between senior housing, affordability, and accessible housing.
So if you look at the housing production plan from 2012,
Mm,
it spends a lot of time talking about housing affordability. So I
okay.
think it really depends upon, the circumstance of a particular senior couple.
Yeah. Okay.
If they're very, very wealthy, then they probably don't care about the cost of heating. If they're middle class, they may feel a little bit more. If they're low income, then they definitely care about it.
Okay.
So it does talk about the housing burden, the
Mhm.
cost burden. So what's generally considered as affordable is that you're spending no more than 30% of your annual income on rent and utilities and the like. So if you are spending more than that on rent or mortgage, then you are considered housing burdened.
Mm-hmm.
So it goes all into that. So I recommend the housing production plan was well written, in my opinion. It's got a lot of great information in it. And
Yeah.
I think it really helps explain the situation.
But we have, in this town, we have tax breaks for property taxes for seniors, right?
I don't know the particulars. I know there's the senior work-off program, but that only applies to low-income seniors.
Oh, okay, okay. All right. Okay.
A lot of the seniors leaving my neighborhood, I question why they were leaving. We've had a turnover. And they're mostly just moving to go closer to their grandkids. Like they weren't leaving because they wanted housing options. They were leaving
Okay.
because, yeah, there were so many different reasons. But I know Rick had a meeting up at the senior center a couple years ago, and he even said the seniors he talked to there also were not looking for housing options. And that's why I called them, because like the number H13, it says housing options for seniors. And I haven't heard, at least in my small group that I keep asking, none of them have been looking for housing options. So I asked him what he heard. And he actually said he heard the same thing,
Okay,
that the
and that's why I was trying
seniors
to
they talked to
clarify
weren't
what the.
looking to move.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I'll forward you that.
I mean, it came up as one of the pretty high up goals, so I was kind of asking, really, what does that mean? What does that look like for the town?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that also, if you were to do a survey that targets the senior population, you know, all different people,
Mm,
then you may get quite a variety of responses.
yeah.
So,
Yep. Okay.
So I think for the next meeting, we could send out a copy of the master plan, or if anybody, do you really need a copy of the section, or does everybody know how to get it online?
so I did notice that the link for the master plan is broken, so it
Oh.
doesn't work. So unfortunately, Michelle has been out sick for a couple of weeks now.
Oh,
Mm,
wow.
So I did ask her to, she does all of our web work.
yeah.
So I did ask her to fix the link. And so when she comes back into the office, I'm sure she'll be able to do that. In the meantime, I can certainly scan the housing chapter and send that over to you folks. And I can also send out that 2012 housing production plan.
Yeah, you broke up a little for me, but I don't think you have to scan it for us. I think, at least in my opinion, we can wait till Michelle's back to get the link,
Okay.
because you have so much on your plate right now. I hate to have you have to scan the master plan since it's already online. But maybe when she comes back, you can just send us the link for that section and the 2012 housing production plan.
Shall do.
That'd be great. Does anybody else have any questions?
No.
Okay, hearing none, we'll go on to the next section of our agenda. Are there any A&Rs, lot releases, or bonds?
None.
Any subcommittee updates?
Not. Nope. Not from me.
Nope.
Okay, so the next planning board meeting is March 18th. And ZBA meeting is March 25th. And
It
MPIC
is
is March 20th.
possible. I haven't received any applications for the ZBA meeting, so it's possible that that meeting will be canceled.
Okay. All right. And MPIC will be March 20th. Anyone else have anything to discuss tonight? Nope.
No.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, Millie Milton,
Here. Oh, yes.
Bill Pierce,
Aye.
Present.
Anthony,
Aye.
and I'm an aye. See you guys on the 18th.
Good night,
Take
everybody.
care, everyone.
Good
Good night.
night. Thank you. Thanks, Amy.
Bye.
Bye.